Hi, my name's Mark and welcome to the channel. I'm joined here by Gus, and today we're going to talk a little bit about revamping my craft room phase 1. Let's get into it. I'm fairly new to posting videos here on YouTube, and part of the challenges that have come up have been finding an appropriate place to film. So we're here in a guest room of our house, and previous videos that I've filmed have been in front of a window. And so we're in the same room, just facing a different direction. Hi. And I had somebody comment and say that was a fairly distracting background, and I would always notice when I was filming if there were birds outside the window, or it was a really windy or stormy day, or of course, filming in the daytime versus filming at night, it created a drastically different look and background. So I've wanted to find a way to revamp this room for a while now, and I started this journey by heading to IKEA. If you're new to the channel, I'm based in Cleveland, Ohio, so the two nearest IKEAs to me are either in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, or Columbus, Ohio. In this scenario, the Pittsburgh IKEA had the items that I was looking for in stock, so that's where we're heading today. I looked online at having these items delivered, but it was going to take a couple of weeks before the earliest delivery date, and it also looked like I needed to be home to accept the delivery, and I couldn't really sacrifice any days in the coming weeks to be home for the delivery windows. So here's my road trip. Fortunately, I had beautiful weather for the drive, and I made pretty good time. So I'm heading to IKEA specifically to pick up Billy bookcases. We have 3 Billy bookcases here in our home office, and we've lined them up next to each other to look sort of like built-ins. And once they were next to each other, I followed a YouTube tutorial that I'll link below, or I'll attempt to link the video at the top of the screen here, and we drilled through and bolted these together. So that's the little silver that you can see there, right above the bookshelf, and all I had to do was use a fairly inexpensive drill to drill through the preset bookcase levels until I reached through both sides and drilled a large enough hole to run these bolts, these hex cap bolts through. And once I secured those front and back at 3 or 4 different height levels, it really pulled the bookcases together so that there's no gapping, and from just a few feet away, they really look like one unit, or a sort of faux built-in shelf. We've paired these bookcases with the Billy drawers, and you'll see those on the bottom 2 levels of the shelves, and I find that between the drawers and the shelf space, these provide a great deal of storage. So for our guest room, which is turning more and more into my crafting room and a space where I can film these videos, we're going to bring 2 bookcases home, join them together, and hopefully create a slightly better backdrop for my filming. So let's head home, start putting things together, and see what we can do. One challenge of this project is that the room is pretty tight, so all of this undoing and redoing has to be done while shuffling everything else around. So my first step here is disassembling my previous filming desk. You'll see my attached tripods, my monitors, lights, all sorts of things on this desk. And this is the space I was previously using for my filming, and it worked pretty well. It was a large plain white desk from IKEA, and I chose to put on legs that have casters so I could wheel it around fairly easily. And I liked this for a couple of reasons. I loved the size. I could put a ton of things on the desk and still maintain a clear space for filming from my above head camera. And I could also double and use the desk for my Swift and winder and other project goods that I wanted to have at the ready. So all of my cords, cables were woven through the legs of the desk and strapped to the desk, trying to keep it as tidy as I could. Anyway, this large desk was a little bit too large for the space. I had it crammed into the corner of this room, and that's why my filming was always in front of that backdrop of the windows. And as I sat filming, you'll see later in the video when I show you the behind the scenes of my setup, my front-facing camera is about 2 feet away from my face, and I have all sorts of lights shining right on me so that I look as human as possible when I'm filming these videos. And the desk was pushed all the way up against a wall. So I'm sitting in the corner of a room, staring at a wall with bright lights on me, feeling really isolated, feeling pretty awkward about the filming when I have to talk to the camera. A lot of my videos have voiceover for the majority of the edited portions, simply because I find it a lot easier to talk to the microphone without a camera running on me. I'm pretty self-conscious about how I look, especially the older I get, the more hair I lose, all of that. Another thing I'm sure so many people can identify with. It's funny sometimes to look in the mirror and think, yes, that's me. So filming with a camera right on me sometimes feels a little bit awkward, and I have to pretend I'm talking to someone. I have to imagine someone watching the video to help myself relax a little bit. So that's one big impetus of redoing this room. I wanted to get the desk out of the corner. I wanted to be able to look out into the room and also look out the windows and look at the natural light from my vantage point when I'm filming and knitting, crocheting, recording content. So I opted for a slightly smaller desk. It's still a plain white desktop from IKEA, and the same legs that I had on the previous desk transfer to this new one. So that's what I'm doing here, putting on new legs for the desk, and it still gives me enough space to film, but my workspace will be a little bit more compact. However, I think the sacrifice is worth it because it gives me more flexibility in the room as a whole. So, step 1, disassembling the desk, taking off all of the tripods, all the cables, all the camera cords, and then transferring all of that to the new desk. Following that, we're going to remove the headboard that's behind me in this shot and start to put together our Billy bookcases. And for that, my husband is going to join me. So I'm going to cut to a little bit of music for the rest of this building montage, and I'll check in just a few minutes. So now that everything's put together, I need to clamp these shelves so that I can drill through and seal them as one unit. So I've got some strong clamps here that I bought from Amazon for another project, and I'm just clamping in a few different positions down the shelves. And you'll see as I do this, the shelves come together with no visible gapping. You can see the line where they meet, but there's no space between them. I know that in my house I have fairly uneven hardwood floors, so putting a bookcase next to another does not guarantee that they will sit at the same level. So you'll see me here again, clamping at a few different positions down the shelves before I drill through them. Now, in hindsight, I should have done this clamping and drilling before installing the drawers, but I installed the drawers without thinking about it, and now that they're in, I don't really want to take them out. So I think clamping the top 2/3 will be sufficient. So I'm starting with a small drill bit about the same size as the hole of the pre-drilled bookcase levels, and I'm going through both sides until my drill bit comes all the way through. So I'll do this at matching levels in a few different places from top to bottom of these bookcases. I'm starting with a fairly small drill bit, and then I'll work my way up until I reach the appropriate size to run my bolts all the way through. Drilling through the bookcase like this creates quite a bit of dust and debris, so I want to do this whole process before finishing up the room. I want to do it while there's still time to come through and vacuum, wipe up all the dust, before I totally finish decorating and setting up these shelves. So now I'm moving to a larger drill bit, and here's a little bit of foreshadowing, a spoiler for you. I thought that this 1/4-inch drill bit would be large enough for the bolts to comfortably slide through, but you'll see in a moment that that's not the case. So a fun fact about me is that as I do these DIY projects, whether it's putting something together in this case, or knitting or crocheting, cooking, whatever I'm doing, I'm of the mind that I like to keep the project moving along. So if I run into a hiccup, instead of starting over from scratch or undoing all of my work, I like to see if there's a way I can salvage a project without too much fuss or heartache. So, after drilling and preparing to bolt these shelves together, before decorating, before bringing any of this other stuff in, I realized that the bolts I had left over from my previous project were too short. They were the wrong size. I had used up the whole case of bolts on my previous bookcase joining from the home office. So I had to go to Amazon and order the correct size, which came overnight, but still it meant that I couldn't quite finish the project when I had started it the previous day. And here's my other hiccup now of trying to put the bolts in and realizing that the holes are not big enough. So off come the sweaters, off comes my trunk. I have to kind of disassemble some of the decoration here to make space to drill through these holes with one more drill bit, and then hopefully I'll be all set. So this is common in my projects that because it's a do-it-yourself, because I'm learning as I go, I might run into a slight speed bump or a hiccup, and I like to just keep going. I like to salvage it if I can. I do take a moment to pause and make sure that I'm not going to put myself in danger, or I'm not going to risk breaking something or ruining the project. But if I can continue and make things work in my haphazard way, I do. So here's me going in with the final drill bit size and making sure that these holes are large enough for my bolts to run through. So, of course, now that I'm doing this again, re-drilling these holes, I'm going to make a mess and I'm going to have to move everything so I can vacuum one more time. But that's okay, it's going to be worth it in the end. So here I am thinking I can just run the drill right next to these glass vases, which is not going to work. So let me move one, and I'm just going to going rogue here. Anyway, now that I have things the right size, I'm going to drill the rest of these holes through, and then I can go in and place 1/2 of each bolt. These bolts are really nice because both sides are finished and smooth. You don't have the jagged end of one of the bolts sticking out of the other side. Both sides have a nice flat finish. You do notice the silver, but on my bookcases in the office, I ended up putting things in front of the places where I had joined. So I have a book leaning against it, or some sort of basket or file folder. So if you feel like doing this project at home, I would recommend it. I'm going to link the necessary tools below, and I think if you know what you're doing and you have the tools in hand, it's a pretty quick, easy project. I think if it's a project that I'm doing, then most anyone out there can do it without too much fuss. So now I'm just tightening these bolts. Both sides have a hex opening, so I'm using 2 hex keys or 2 Allen keys to tighten this up, and I'm tightening it as far as it'll go, just so that these bookcases sit all the way flush together. No gapping, and it's also going to make the bookcases pretty sturdy. It would take a lot to get them to tumble forward when they're joined like this. I like using these Billy bookcases for a few reasons. First, I think they're pretty cost effective. They're a very low price option compared to other bookcases and shelving. The second reason I really like them is their size. They're very tall, and they come in an even taller version for people who have really tall, generous ceilings. But the depth is pretty low. They're just about 1 foot in depth. So in our smaller rooms of the house, these are great because they don't take up much space. They come out from the wall just 1 foot and then give us a lot of storage. And I think the storage is pretty flexible. You'll see that we use our bookcases for some books, but we're not lining the entire cases with books. I think if you do line your Billy bookcases all with books, the shelves do start to sag. It can't quite hold all of that weight. But if you choose to use the shelves in a flexible way, using some baskets, using file folders, bins, other ways of organizing your home, then I think they're a pretty good choice. The final pro that I'll throw out there is that the Billy bookcases are pretty quick and simple to assemble. Compared to something like a Calyx unit from IKEA, those are the ones with all of the cubes, this is much less involved. It's kind of a 1, 2, 3, and you're all put together. All right, a look at what things were like before. You can see my filming desk with a box fan on it and all sorts of junk, facing the wall. So I'm in the corner, staring right at the wall. I have a mirror there, which sometimes made it feel like I was talking to myself or talking to somebody else. But it was a pretty depressing setup. I didn't like feeling that I was just trapped in the corner, staring right at the wall, trying to be animated, trying to feel comfortable and natural when I'm talking to a camera. So that was the biggest reason I wanted to change this setup. I wanted to get out of the corner, and I wanted to float in the middle of the room. Another angle of that same room shows the bed that we keep for the guest room setup. And the bed is great for putting my blocking mats out, but it still wasn't an ideal setup. It takes up a lot of the room, and as you come in, it's there. There's not a great path, there's not a great walkway, and it made the other options for the room pretty inflexible. I'm calling this video and this project my renovation phase 1, because I think down the road we might get rid of the bed altogether and instead opt for having a love seat or a small sofa, just to keep the room flexible for the crafting purposes and the filming purposes as I spend more and more time filming and creating content and videos for YouTube. Before we do the final reveal, here's a quick cat cam check-in. First is Scout. He's our youngest. And then we'll say a quick hello to Gus, our orange prince. So here's the reveal. As I mentioned before, we might get rid of the bed altogether, but for now, there it is. And that was the previous filming area in the corner. I think it's much better suited with the yellow chair and the calyx. The space is still a bit cluttered, and we're going to keep weeding things out. I'd love to hear advice, recommendations, if you have great ways to keep your space organized. I still have my 2 pegboards up. I like the space they give me. I can put a lot of yarn on the wall, and I do like to see my yarn. It keeps me ready to use my stash, and it keeps ideas for projects right at the front of my mind. I use that second board for sort of stash yarn or things that have been used a bit, so I pull from those for color work, etc. So now, pivoting to the other part of the room where the bed used to be, I have my smaller desk on wheels, and behind that I've got the bookcases. I don't want to end up with things being too cluttered or too over the top, so right now I've started with one of my happy, healthy plants and a couple decorative items. And then I've got these vases for scrap yarn and all of my knitting and crochet related books. I don't have that many, but it's the start of my collection. And then several bins for notions, tools, small things to stay organized, and a couple of things on display on this side. I'm going to play around with it, but I like the idea that my backdrop can display things I'm working on, resources that I use, things that are important to me as a crafter. And then I think the rest of the room feels more open this way. Selfishly, I like that there's a TV in here because it means when I'm sitting and knitting or sitting and editing, I can watch a show or I can keep up with something else. And here's a little behind-the-scenes shot of my filming desk. This is the smaller desk, so things are a little bit more compact. First, I have my overhead camera. I have a monitor on the desk. Usually I have 2 monitors out, so I'll set that other one up later. And each monitor shows me exactly what my 2 cameras see in real time, so that I can make sure things are in focus and also in frame. And then I have several lights. Some for the above head view and others for the front-facing camera. All of this is on wheels, so I can scoot it out of the way when I don't need it. Thanks so much for sticking around to the end of this video. I appreciate you taking the time to follow my journey as I revamp this space. If you have any recommendations of really great storage and organization solutions, I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. Giving this video a like, leaving a comment, or subscribing to the channel really helps me out here on YouTube, and I love hearing from you. So thanks again for watching, happy knitting, happy crocheting, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.